You're listening to the Producer Podcast, and I'm your host, Micah Versman. Last time, we began talking with Nathaniel Schexnayder about the creation of the superhero short film NightGuard. Today, we're going to finish up that conversation, including talking about its extended post-production timeline, as well as talking about how to balance that film and family life situation in the narrative space. So without further ado, let's get started. So, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think, didn't you film NightGuard in like several blocks of filming, or was it like all at one time?
Yes. So we filmed a little bit in April of 2018.
Okay.
And that's because we weren't going to get all of our full crew or our full talent in April. And we were going to be able to secure them for May. And the whole plan was to have like a full week of shooting in May, but we knew we wouldn't be able to fit everything we wanted to in that block. So we tried to do some easy stuff in April, which did not turn out to be easy. Even the easy stuff, even the stuff you think should be easy, it's all a challenge.
Yes.
It's all work. So we wanted to do some easy stuff to get us warmed up, to get us an expectation of, how this was going to go. And, and also give it a chance for the people who hadn't worked together, a chance to, to know each other a little bit better and to gel as a team. And that first couple of days was a disaster. It really was. And I think it really set me up for my expectations. It set my expectations of how the shoot was going to be and how difficult it was going to be and how I had to bring my everything that I could, every ounce of energy. It wasn't going to be a fun shoot, but it was, it was going to be a very difficult shoot. But, it was helpful to know that ahead of time. So we did film a couple of days in April, and then the next month we filmed an entire week, which we were better prepared for because of all of the, everything that went wrong in that April block. And then in December of that year, we filmed 2 new scenes to try to fix some story issues as well.
Okay. So, if you were to do another film again in the future, would you still consider doing like multiple blocks like that, or would you try to do it all as one?
Yes. So I think it kind of depends. I think if you have a paid crew, you could probably, go all the way through, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever the duration is that you're shooting. But when you're working with a lot of volunteer work and a lot of volunteer resources and you're self-funding it, sometimes logistically you may only get your paid crew or your paid talent to show up for some days and not others. So, in a perfect world, you'd want to get it all done at once, right? But this film was hardly perfect production-wise from start to finish, and going forward, I think it's perfectly fine to break things up.
Yeah.
If you're on you have limited resources, and you're shooting on weekends. It's like, what? Let's film this part of the movie on this weekend, and we'll try to get the rest of the group when they're available next at a discounted rate or for free or when they're available or, wherever the case may be. And I know that's not a really sexy way of filmmaking, but, you kind of have to grind it out that way, but you can still get it done, and you might be able to get it done cheaper that way, than you might otherwise.
Okay.
From my experience.
Yeah, for sure. So NightGuard jumping into post production had what's at least to myself and other people that I've talked to had like it had a very long timeline for that. Was that kind of how it was planned to be, or was that just unintentional, I guess?
Yes. So when we set out to make the movie, and I wrote the movie, and I'm planning things with Jonick and other folks, we had this vision, or at least I had this vision of making the greatest. I don't know about the greatest, but like a game changing film
Mm-hmm.
in Christian media, that you'd watch it and you would go, oh my, this is one of the best things I've ever seen. And then when we sat down to look at the footage, to look at a rough draft, I knew immediately that we had failed, and that the movie was kind of a train wreck. And so we worked through the edit. It took a while because some of our schedules weren't lining up. My sister, who does some editing, and Jonick, who does some editing, they would do an edit and they would kind of compare notes, and it wouldn't work. And eventually, we filmed new scenes to try to make it, try to make the story work and try to make the movie work, and it still wasn't working. And you kind of have a choice of saying, okay, well, let's just put it out. Let's just have it be finished with. And as a producer, you kind of just want to release it and then move on.
Mm-hmm.
And, at some point you do have to cut it loose. But thankfully, and to Jonick's credit, after enough time, I think away from the project, he kind of came back to it and kind of sat down and delivered an edit that really fixed a lot of the issues in the movie.
Okay.
And I feel like he really cracked the code. And I think he did need that time to try to figure things out in his mind. And once I saw the edit, I realized, this is it. This is really good. So we certainly didn't intend for it to take that much time in post, but I think it was worth it, if for no other reason than having the extra time to kick it around, kick the tires, mess with it before finally coming upon an edit that was good. And then, music did take a while trying to get the score to where it is now. And it definitely tests your patience as a producer,
Yes.
especially if you're not, especially if you're not scoring the movie, and if you're not editing the movie, and you're not doing sound design. The most you can kind of do is, hey, so how are things going? Are we, what's the project and the progress here? And but that's where you need some patience is important, and understand that it's a creative field, and when you're doing it on a limited budget, sometimes things take longer than if you're paying lots of cash for them. And in the end, we have a product that, and a movie that I'm very proud to have worked on, and I'm proud of what we were able to achieve, even with as much time as it took.
So, especially in like the last several years since you started working on NightGuard, just the whole way movies in general are distributed has changed a lot. So, what was like did you have like an original plan for how you were thinking to release this? And then did that change at all compared to now how you did end up releasing it?
Yes. So initially we, one of the things that we were thinking about when we were filming this movie is just trying to make this a big sizzle reel.
Okay.
And, or like a proof of concept, and have this to say, look, this is our calling card, either for different projects or maybe a proof of concept for a full-length movie or a TV series for NightGuard. So that's kind of what we were thinking initially is, not to try to think of this as a moneymaker, but as a proof of concept for an investment down the road.
Yeah.
And so so in the back of our mind, we're wondering, well, how can we do this? And so we didn't really want to just drop it on YouTube because, we didn't want to drop it there and just say, hey, look, it's out there to die, a slow and painful death amongst the immense library of YouTube.
Yes.
But we weren't sure exactly how we wanted to approach it. And one of the things is we were contacted by Vision Video, our distributor, and they just had access to different markets that we would not have access to, right? Mm-hmm. Well, we could put it on YouTube, but they can put it in many other places. And so it definitely, for us, it's an opportunity to get the movie in front of people to see what the reaction is going to be. Is there any appeal to a NightGuard series? And so I think some of the helpful things with NightGuard is we didn't spend a ton of money on the movie. And so, we didn't have this huge investment, and we can try to, use it to see if anyone's interested in investing at all in the future. And certainly that was one thing when we, wrote the movie. So yeah, I don't know. I kind of lost my train of thought there, Micah.
That's okay.
So I think today's distribution, especially with streaming, gives me, helps the length be a bit more palatable when you're seeing some shows that are 25 and 30 minutes long. So it does feel a little bit like a TV pilot in some cases.
Yeah.
So, there's that. And certainly when we filmed the movie, that was not the length of TV shows. And so seeing the new streaming opportunities out there in terms of flexibility of length, that's definitely a new consideration for us. Is, maybe 30 minutes an episode, if there was to be a TV series, is more palatable than, making a 45-minute show that maybe you can film in a week, but maybe not on a small budget. So,
yeah. So then, I guess looking back at the production of NightGuard overall, what was maybe one of the biggest things you learned?
I think it's really important for the producer to have someone assisting them, keeping things straight, keeping people straight, and the production definitely had its issues. When we're doing a company move from one location to another, and we sent some of the crew to one location that we initially had secured, but then we moved it to another on the call sheet, and so that was mixed up. And sometimes, when are people arriving kind of got mixed up. Communication among departments kind of got messed up sometimes, when food was supposed to arrive, and it's a lot for somebody to handle on that large of a production. Still a small production, but just having somebody who's helping you as much as possible, even just to encourage you and make sure that you're eating and sleeping, making sure you're getting back to people, is, I think, really important. And I just learned that, producing is really hard. That's probably the biggest thing I learned. And just having somebody who you can rely on and help you is really, really important. And that's probably the biggest thing I learned. Right, there's so many great experiences that we had, and it's very rewarding, but that's a big one. Right. Here, I'll tell you something else, Micah, that I learned is when you ask, sometimes people say yes to crazy things. And I'll give you an example, and this is kind of a God thing, because one of the scenes in the movie takes place in a hospital, and we had a hospital lined up pretty far from us. It would have been a long company move to get there, but we had it lined up, and our backup plan was kind of a nursing home that was a little bit closer to us, and so about the day before we're supposed to film in the hospital kind of drops us,
Okay.
says we can't use the location, and the nursing home, all the rooms are full, and so we have no location whatsoever. And right, we've assembled our crew. I don't know how we're going to find another time to film this, and you know, it was suggested that, you know what, why don't you just call some hospitals around and see if tomorrow they'll let you film at their hospital. And we're not an established film group. No one's ever heard of us. But I called two places, and the day of, as we're filming in one location, that hospital called us back and said, "Hey, you can film here." And the location was excellent. It really serviced all our needs. It was very close for us to get to. And we actually went back to that location to film another scene kind of outside. And so it ended up being a great relationship that was built for us. All because, right, we could have just kind of sat in our hands and said, "Hey, look, we have no idea what to do." But
Yeah.
right, sometimes if you just ask, you never know what you might be able to get. And that was another thing that I learned is sometimes people are just super generous and they'll do some of the most unexpected things for you, which is huge.
Yeah, no, that is true, and I've definitely been in those positions of locations dropping and being that close, and yeah, it's it's always an adventure finding new ones. So I have a few more kind of wrap up questions here for you, and these aren't necessarily like specific to NightGuard, but
Sure.
for you, like, what advice do you have for filmmakers out there about how to balance spending time working in film and spending time with your family?
Yes. So I'm married. I have 3 kids who are all under the age of 4, and they definitely are very time consuming. And so, uh, having siblings who are single or they're married with no kids, who do film semi professionally, it's I look at them and I go, they just have a huge opportunity that I don't have anymore. And it's tough to basically say, at least for me, and this is kind of the place where I'm at, is this is kind of a hobby, and it's my hobby, and I love it, but it's time consuming. It costs a lot of money, and maybe someday it won't be a hobby, but for now it definitely takes a back burner to kind of everything else that I do, work, family, and it's, when I can get to it, I'll get to it. But my family is very supportive that, when I've got to do it, I could be there and focus on it, 100%. But it just means that, things don't happen as fast for, I'm not on as many movie sets as I'd like to. But that's okay, because for me, I think where I'm at is there are different seasons in life for all of us. And the season that I'm at is good, with my family, with work and with, just, personal, and that's okay. And so it's, if you're content with where you are with your season of life, you can just let things happen as they come to you. You can let the Lord bring things to you, or not bring things to you, and opportunities. And I don't know that I'll be doing film stuff forever. I don't have a major passion for it necessarily, but it's like, once you get a new idea,
Yes.
you got to go for it. And but it's that balance is all right. Family things come first. You gotta buy a van before you buy a camera sometimes, and and that's okay. That's a good season of life to be in still, and yeah, I don't know if that was helpful at all, but
Yeah.
yeah.
No, that was good. And so, kind of following up on that one, do you have any tips on how to not bring like the stress of filmmaking home to where it starts affecting your family life?
Yes. So, uh, some things when we were filming Night Guard, I only had one baby at that time, and but that was that took a huge toll
Mm-hmm.
on my family. The that filming in April, the month in between where we were prepping for filming in May, and that whole week where I killed myself and didn't see my family hardly at all, and um and that's okay because it was just one week.
Yeah.
It was just a short period of time, and in between there, it's sort of like, okay, so around work and family time, answer emails and plan things as I'm able to. And so, it means you're probably not going to be able to watch a ton of movies or play video games. You only have a short period of free time. And so do you devote that to, leisure stuff, or are you going to, do the work of making your film project happen? And so there was definitely a period of time when all of that time was going into the filmmaking. And every night I was kind of working on that when I wasn't spending time with my family, and talking to people at late night, late hours of the night. And I would go on walks with or just at the park with my kids, kind of watching them, giving my wife a break, and I'm on the phone texting or calling, some film people to try to sort out details. So, it's kind of trying to juggle what you can while still trying to make things happen. Um, so I guess you asked about advice, right? What advice would I give to
Yeah.
somebody? And I think the advice that I would give somebody is, right, movie making is, unless it's your full-time gig, it's um, it's a hobby, and it can be a really important hobby. You can invest, a lot of time and effort and money, and make something that's really good. I'm not saying you can't do that, but I think when you have a season of life where you have a family, you know, I think it's okay to be in that season, and in maybe in 20 years you can do filming again, and you can devote more of your time to that, and maybe you'll have more, yeah. And so there may be more opportunities later. I know we want to accomplish great things when we're young,
Mm-hmm.
but I think about Moses in Exodus, where around age 40 he had been trained by his adoptive family, these Egyptians, to be kind of a ruler.
Yeah.
Right, he was a prince of Egypt, and at age 40, he thought he was ready to lead a rebellion against the Egyptians. He's attacking Egyptians and killing them, breaking up brawls and things like that. And then all of a sudden he's running for his life and spending 40 more years in the wilderness. But at the end of that 40 years, God is ready to use him for something huge.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, Moses is ready. He's been humbled. He's ready to be used by God. And I think it's tough to accept the fact that maybe this is not the season where you're going to be doing great things, but maybe the things that you're called to do right now are great. And down the road, you're going to have the insight and wisdom and maturity to pursue your dream at a level that, we couldn't initially imagine 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Um,
No, that's a good way to think about it. So, final question, because I just, I have you, I gotta ask, but is NightGuard going to return?
Excellent question. I'll tell you a little bit that because we saw each other at the festival, and that's where you saw it, I think, for the first time.
Yep.
And I had written a feature-length screenplay, and and I thought to myself, I could probably produce this on a low budget, and I was ready to kind of move off of Night Guard and move on to this, but the reaction to Night Guard has been very, very positive, even more positive than I thought, way more positive. And it's really made me shelf my screenplay and just make me explore opportunities to perhaps make Night Guard into a TV series. And at this point, I don't think I could self-fund it like I have with my projects in the past, but we're thinking about ways that maybe we could raise funds to make a series. But that's something that we're trying to do. So I'd like to tell you that Night Guard season 1 is on the way, but we'll have to see. It's very much in the its infancy, if it ever happens. So we'll wait and see.
All right. Yeah, I have some of those projects as well that they're in my brain. I'm thinking over them. I have no idea if they'll happen, but yeah. All right. So yeah, with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up this episode of the podcast. So thank you very much for coming on and chatting with us today, Nathaniel.
Thank you, Micah.
And with that, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Producer Podcast. Until next time, make sure to subscribe to the Producer Podcast, and thanks for listening.